The last line of defense. The UES Phoenix hung in the void like a solitary sentinel, its hull gleaming under the light of distant stars. Commander Elena Reyes stood on the bridge, her weathered face illuminated by the glow of tactical displays that painted the surrounding space in shades of red. 57 enemy vessels approached in perfect formation, each one larger and more heavily armed than her lone warship. Stealth systems at maximum capacity, Commander, Lieutenant Torres reported from the tactical station. But they'll detect us in approximately 8 minutes. The nebula's radiation is interfering with our cloaking field. Reyes nodded, her eyes never leaving the holographic display where the alien armada, the Kryvax Collective, advanced inexorably toward the Phoenix and the inhabited world it protected. Meridian Colony, 2 million civilians, Earth's farthest outpost, and humanity's foothold in this sector of space. Status of the quantum disruptor, she asked, her voice steady despite the weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. Chief Engineer Takashi consulted his display before answering. 78% charged, Commander. We need at least 15 more minutes for full capacity. We don't have 15 minutes, Reyes replied, finally turning to face her crew. The bridge fell silent, each officer's face reflecting the grim reality of their situation. 6 months ago, the Kryvax had emerged from uncharted space, a hive mind species bent on assimilating all sentient life forms into their collective consciousness. Their crystalline ships had already consumed 3 human colonies, each defeat proving humanity's conventional weapons were ineffective against their advanced technology. The Phoenix was humanity's newest vessel, equipped with experimental quantum technology, a desperate gamble in a war humanity was losing. The rest of Earth's fleet was scattered across the galaxy, fighting hopeless battles or evacuating doomed colonies. They were the last line of defense, the only shield between Meridian and annihilation. New contact, announced Lieutenant Park from the sensor station, her voice rising with tension. It's a Kryvax command vessel, Commander, 3 times larger than anything we've encountered before. On the main view screen, a massive crystalline structure materialized from the swirling gases of the nebula. Unlike the angular forms of the smaller Kryvax vessels, this ship resembled an intricate lattice of pulsing light, its translucent hull revealing complex geometric patterns flowing through its interior. They found us, Torres confirmed, his fingers dancing across his console. Stealth systems compromised. Reyes straightened her uniform jacket, a habit from her academy days that surfaced in moments of crisis. Battle stations. All hands prepare for engagement. Lieutenant Kim, arm all weapon systems but hold fire until my command. The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as the crew prepared for the coming storm. Warning klaxons echoed through the ship as armored blast doors, sealed compartments, and crew members raced to their combat positions. Commander, Communications Officer Harper called out, disbelief evident in her voice. We're receiving a transmission from the Kryvax command vessel. Reyes felt her pulse quicken. In 6 months of brutal conflict, the Kryvax had never communicated with their targets. They simply appeared, attacked, and assimilated. On screen, she ordered, squaring her shoulders. The view screen flickered, and the bridge crew collectively gasped. The figure that appeared wasn't the crystalline form they had expected, but a human, or what had once been human. A man in his 40s with silver-streaked hair and eyes replaced by geometric patterns that matched the energy signatures of the Kryvax ships. Commander Elena Reyes, the figure said, its voice carrying unnatural harmonics that sent chills down her spine. Your resistance is inefficient and ultimately futile. The Phoenix will power down and prepare for integration. Your crew will achieve unity within our collective. Reyes stepped forward, anger burning away her fear. This is Commander Elena Reyes of the United Earth Defense Force. We will not surrender, we will not power down, and we will not be integrated. The Kryvax ambassador's expression remained eerily static. Biological individualism is an evolutionary dead end. The collective offers perfection through unity. Your species' potential is wasted in fragmented consciousness. You call the slaughter of millions unity. First Officer Chen demanded, unable to contain himself. The ambassador tilted his head slightly. Inefficient biological processes were terminated. Valuable neural pathways were preserved within the collective. Nothing of significance was lost. Reyes felt cold fury at the casual dismissal of human lives. We reject your offer. Humanity will remain free. Then you have chosen termination, the ambassador stated. Your technology will still serve the collective without your biological components. The transmission cut abruptly, returning the view screen to the image of the approaching armada. They're moving into attack formation, Torres reported. Chen turned to Reyes. At least now we know they want something we have. Which means, Reyes added, her mind racing, we have leverage. Lieutenant Kim, prepare all countermeasures. Lieutenant Torres, plot a course directly through the center of their formation. The bridge erupted in surprised exclamations. Commander, Torres protested, that's suicide. Even with our shields at maximum. It would be, Reyes agreed, if we were planning a conventional engagement. But we're not. She turned to the communications officer. Lieutenant Harper, send a tight beam transmission to Earth. Inform High Command that the Kryvacs are specifically targeting our quantum technology. Tell them we're about to field test the disruptor. Harper nodded and began the transmission as Reyes activated the shipwide comm. All hands, this is the commander. Battle stations and prepare for extreme maneuvers. What we're about to attempt has never been done before, but I believe in this ship, and I believe in every one of you. She paused, searching for words that could convey what she needed them to understand. The odds are against us. They always have been. But the Phoenix was built for this moment, to defy those odds, to stand when no one else could. Today we carry humanity's hope into the heart of the enemy. Whatever happens next, remember that they fear what we've built, and that means we've finally found their weakness. She closed the channel and returned to her command chair. The bridge crew looked at her with renewed determination. Chief Takashi, she called to engineering. Divert all non-essential power to the quantum systems and shields. Dr. Lin, report to the bridge immediately. Minutes later, Dr. Mei Lin arrived on the bridge. Her normally pristine lab coat was wrinkled from what had likely been another all-night research session. At 34, she was the youngest person ever to win the Newton Prize in Theoretical Physics and the mastermind behind the Phoenix's revolutionary quantum disruptor. Commander, she said tersely, tell me you're not planning what I think you're planning. I'm afraid I am, Doctor, Reyes replied. The Kryvacs just made contact. They're specifically interested in your technology, which suggests it threatens them more than we realized. Lin's eyes widened. They made contact. That's unprecedented. And telling, Chen added. They've never bothered to communicate before obliterating our defenses. Lin moved to a secondary console, her fingers flying over the interface. The quantum disruptor isn't ready for combat deployment. In simulations, it's only been stable 63% of the time. And that's under controlled conditions. And the other 37%? Reyes asked, though she already knew the answer. Catastrophic failure, Lin said bluntly. At best, the drive burns out, and we're dead in space. At worst, she gestured vaguely, the physics gets interesting. Theoretically, we could create a rupture in space-time that would destroy everything within several thousand kilometers, including the Kryvac ships, Torres pointed out. And us, Lin countered. Reyes studied the tactical display. The Kryvac vessels had nearly completed their encirclement. Within minutes, they'd be trapped with no hope of escape or victory through conventional means. What if, she said slowly, we don't try to escape? What if we use the disruptor to jump directly into the center of their formation, activate the quantum pulse, and then jump out before the effect propagates? Lin stared at her. You want to use my disruptor as a quantum bomb? That's not what it was designed for. But is it possible? Rise pressed. The scientist was silent for a long moment, calculations visibly running through her mind. Theoretically, yes, we could create a localized disruption field that might, and I stress might, interrupt their hive mind connection. But the timing would have to be perfect. We'd need to jump in, initiate the pulse, and jump out within seconds, all while under heavy fire. And if it works? Rise asked. Best case, we temporarily sever their collective consciousness, leaving each ship isolated and confused. It would be like suddenly blinding a coordinated army. They'd lose their tactical advantage. How long would the effect last? Lynn shook her head. Minutes. Hours? There's no way to know without a field test, which is exactly what we're about to conduct. Reyes made her decision. Lieutenant Torres, calculate jump coordinates to the center of their formation. Lieutenant Kim, prepare all weapon systems. The moment we jump in, I want everything we have directed at their command vessel. Commander, Harper interrupted. The Kryvax ships are charging weapons. Estimated time to firing range, 20 seconds. Reyes turned to Lynn. Doctor, I need you to make this work. Humanity needs you to make this work. Their eyes met, and Reyes saw the same determination that had driven Lynn to create revolutionary technology against impossible deadlines. I'll need to modify the disruptor sequencing, she said, already moving toward the engineering station. And we'll have to reroute power from life support on decks 6 through 9. Do it, Reyes ordered. Evacuate those decks immediately. As the crew rushed to prepare, Reyes found herself staring at the view screen, at the crystalline death approaching from all sides. In her mind, she saw her home in New Seattle, the garden she had tended before this deployment, the family she might never see again. But if they succeeded today, if Lynn's theory proved correct, she might give humanity something far more valuable than personal comfort. She might give them a future. Disruptor modification complete, Lynn announced. Quantum systems primed and ready, Commander. It's not stable. The resonance patterns are fluctuating beyond predicted parameters. Will it work? Reyes asked simply. Lynn met her gaze steadily. It'll work. The question is whether we'll survive it. Enemy weapons locked on us, Torres reported. Multiple energy signatures charging. All personnel secure for jump. Reyes ordered. This is it, people. History happens now. She took one last look at her crew, at the faces of men and women who had volunteered for what many considered a suicide mission from the start. Whatever happened in the next few minutes, they had already proven humanity's greatest strength, the willingness to stand against impossible odds, to fight not just for survival, but for the right to determine their own destiny. Initiate jump, Reyes commanded, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Torres activated the sequence. Jumping in 3, 2, 1. The stars on the view screen blurred, and the Phoenix, humanity's lone warship against an alien armada, leaped into the heart of the enemy, carrying with it humanity's last desperate hope, humanity's finest hour. Reality itself seemed to tear as the Phoenix materialized in the heart of the Kryvax formation. The lurch of the jump drive sent several crew members sprawling, and warning indicators flashed across every console on the bridge. Multiple hull breaches on decks 2 and 5, reported Lieutenant Harper, her fingers dancing across the damage control interface. Emergency force fields holding at 82%. Commander Reyes barely registered her words. The view screen showed a sight no human had ever witnessed, the Kryvax Armada from within, their massive crystalline ships now surrounding the Phoenix in a sphere of deadly alien geometry. For a split second, the enemy vessels seemed frozen in confusion, their perfect formation disrupted by the Phoenix's impossible appearance in their midst. They didn't expect this, Chen breathed, a hint of savage satisfaction in his voice. We've got maybe 10 seconds before they reorganize, Reyes said. Weapons free. Target the command ship and fire everything we've got. The Phoenix shuddered as its railguns, missile pods, and energy lances unleashed a coordinated barrage against the cathedral-like command vessel. Direct hits blossomed against its crystalline hull, fracturing sections and sending glittering debris spinning into the void. "Doctor, status of the quantum disruptor," Rise demanded, gripping her chair as the ship rocked from a retaliatory blast that had managed to slip through their shields. Dr. Lin was hunched over a console, sweat beading on her forehead. "Disruptor is destabilizing. The resonance is spreading faster than predicted. We need another 45 seconds to achieve full disruptive effect." "We don't have 45 seconds," Torres warned, his console lighting up with enemy targeting locks. "They're recovering from the surprise." All ships reorienting to firing positions. In the chaos, Rise found her mind strangely calm. She thought of Earth, of the colonies fighting for survival. She thought of the memorial walls that had grown too large to maintain, of humanity pushed to the edge of extinction by an enemy that couldn't even be bothered to communicate until today, until they saw something they feared. "Chief Takashi," she called to engineering. "Redirect power from the jump drive to the quantum disruptor. Every ounce you can spare." "Commander," Takashi protested, his voice strained. "If we do that, we won't have enough power for a second jump. We'll be trapped here." "If the disruptor works, we won't need a jump," Rise replied. "And if it doesn't, a second jump won't save us anyway." Dr. Lin looked up, her eyes wide with understanding. "You're talking about overloading the disruptor, creating a cascade effect." She shook her head. "The simulations never went that far. There's no way to predict what will happen." "Does unpredictability favor us or them?" Rise asked simply. The ghost of a smile crossed Lin's face. "Us. Always us. Unpredictability is the one human trait the Kryvax have never managed to assimilate." "Then do it," Rise ordered. The bridge fell silent as Lin began the sequence, all eyes on the view screen where dozens of Kryvax vessels were now orienting their weapons toward the Phoenix. They were out of time. "Disruptor at critical threshold," Lin announced, her voice surprisingly steady. "Initiating pulse in 3, 2. The closest Kryvax vessel fired a beam of searing energy slicing toward them. "Brace," Chen shouted. The impact threw Rise against her restraints as the beam grazed their starboard hull. Alarms blared, and emergency lighting flickered. The deck trembled beneath them like a living thing in pain. "Hull breach on Deck 7, Harper reported, her voice tight with control. "Sealing emergency bulkheads. We've lost 3 crew members." Rise closed her eyes for just a heartbeat, feeling each loss like a physical blow. Names and faces flashed through her mind. Rodriguez, Patul, Wu, people who had trusted her, followed her into this impossible situation. She would remember them. If they survived, the world would remember them. "Pulse initiated," Lin called out, her voice cutting through Rise's grief. "Quantum disruptor at 118% of maximum rated output. Field expanding." On the view screen, an impossible sight unfolded. A wave of shimmering energy erupted from the Phoenix, expanding outward in all directions. Where it touched the Kryvax vessels, their smooth coordination faltered. Several smaller ships collided, their perfect formation dissolving into chaos. "It's working," Chen whispered, awe in his voice. "Their collective consciousness is disrupted." The Kryvax command ship fired again, but the beam went wide, missing the Phoenix entirely. Around it, the smaller vessels began firing at random, some even hitting their own allies in the confusion. "Incoming transmission," Harper announced. "It's fragmented, coming from multiple Kryvax vessels simultaneously." "On screen," Rise ordered. The view screen flickered to life, showing not one but dozens of faces, all former humans integrated into the Kryvax collective. But unlike before, their expressions weren't static. Their eyes, those geometric patterns, flickered and shifted. Some looked confused, others terrified. All of them were speaking at once, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of fear and disorientation. "What have you done?" One voice rose above the others, the ambassador from before, but now his voice trembled. The unity, it's fractured. We cannot. I cannot. The transmission cut out abruptly. Doctor. Reyes turned to Lynn. The scientist was staring at her readings in disbelief. The quantum field is expanding exponentially, Commander. It's not just disrupting their communications. It's unraveling the quantum entanglement that binds their consciousness together. She looked up, her eyes wide. We're not just temporarily blinding them. We're permanently severing the connections. A massive explosion rocked the viewscreen as one of the Kryvax vessels detonated, unable to maintain its structural integrity without the collective consciousness guiding its systems. Their command structure is disintegrating, Torres reported, a note of triumph in his voice. Ships are breaking formation. Some are powering down, others are. He didn't need to finish. They could all see it. The mighty Kryvax Armada was falling apart before their eyes. Individual vessels drifting aimlessly or turning on each other in confusion and panic. Commander, Lynn called out, her voice urgent. The quantum cascade is still building. At this rate, it will create a spatial rupture in approximately 3 minutes. Can we stop it? Reyes asked. Lynn shook her head. Not without restoring power to the containment systems, which would mean pulling energy from our shields and weapons. Reyes weighed her options. The Kryvax were in disarray, but not defeated. If they lowered shields now to contain the quantum cascade, they'd be vulnerable to any vessel that managed to regain enough control to fire. Chief Takashi, she called to engineering. Status of the jump drive. Minimum power for a single short-range jump, Commander. It won't get us far, but it might be enough to clear the blast radius if Dr. Lynn's calculations about the rupture are correct. Reyes made her decision. Prepare for emergency jump. Lieutenant Torres, plot a course to Meridian Colony. We need to warn them about the incoming shockwave. As the crew worked frantically to prepare for the jump, Reyes found herself watching the disintegrating Kryvax fleet. Something was happening to the command ship, its crystalline structure pulsing with unstable energy. Commander, Chen said quietly, coming to stand beside her. Look. On the view screen, the faces of the assimilated humans appeared again, this time from the command vessel only. But they were changing. The geometric patterns in their eyes were fading, revealing human eyes beneath, confused, pained, but unmistakably human. Help us. A woman's voice came through, breaking and human. We're still here, trapped inside. The collective is fracturing, but the ship is going to self-destruct. Please. Reyes felt her heart clench. There were humans in there, or what remained of humans, being freed from the collective consciousness, but trapped in dying vessels. How many life signs on the command ship? She demanded. Torres consulted his scanner. Approximately 700, Commander, but they're not fully human anymore. The Kryvax integration process. Is it possible to transport them? Reyes interrupted. Harper looked up from her station. Our transporters can handle maybe 100 before the quantum rupture occurs. 100 out of 700. Reyes closed her eyes briefly. More impossible choices in a day full of them. Begin transport immediately, she ordered. Prioritize any life signs showing the highest human brain wave patterns. Medical teams to the transporter rooms. The next 2 minutes passed in a blur of activity. The quantum rupture grew steadily more unstable as the Phoenix transporters worked at maximum capacity, pulling survivors from the disintegrating command ship. Meanwhile, the other Kryvax vessels continued their chaotic dance of destruction, some fleeing, others attacking randomly, many simply shutting down entirely. Jump drive ready, Takashi reported. But we need to go now, Commander. 30 seconds to quantum rupture, Lynn added, her voice tense. How many? Reyes asked Harper, not needing to explain the question. 83 survivors transported, Commander. Transporter Room 2 reports many are in critical condition but alive. 83 out of 700. It would have to be enough. End transport operations and prepare for jump, Reyes ordered, her voice heavy, all hands secure for emergency maneuvers. As the final countdown began, Reyes watched the Kryvax command ship begin to collapse in on itself, energy cascading through its fracturing structure. She thought of the hundreds still trapped inside, briefly freed from mental slavery only to face destruction. She would carry that weight, along with the weight of her lost crew members. But she would also carry the knowledge that today, humanity had struck a decisive blow against an enemy that had seemed undefeatable. Jumping in 3, 2, 1, Torres counted down. The stars blurred again as the Phoenix tore itself away from the heart of the Kryvax fleet. Behind them, the quantum rupture finally breached containment, creating a shockwave that rippled through spacetime itself. The view screen went white with energy, then black as the safety protocols kicked in. When it cleared seconds later, they were in orbit around Meridian Colony, its blue-green surface peaceful below them. Where the Kryvax Armada had been, there was now only a swirling distortion in space, a quantum storm that would make that region impassable for years to come. "Report," Reyes said, her voice hoarse. "We've cleared the blast radius," Torres confirmed. "Colony defenses are active but holding fire. They've recognized our signature." "The quantum rupture has stabilized," Lynn added, disbelief in her voice. "It created a permanent distortion field rather than a destructive wave. The mathematics of this will keep theorists busy for decades." "Any sign of surviving Kryvax vessels?" Reyes asked. Chen checked the long-range scanners, a few scattered signatures moving away at high speed. "They're in complete disarray, Commander, without their collective consciousness to guide them." He didn't need to finish. The Kryvax threat wasn't completely eliminated, but it had been decisively broken. For the first time since they had appeared 6 months ago, humanity had a fighting chance. "Open a channel to Meridian Control," Reyes ordered Harper, "and then to Earth Command. Tell them." She paused, the full weight of what they had accomplished finally hitting her. "Tell them the Phoenix is reporting the successful deployment of the quantum disruptor. The Kryvax collective consciousness has been disrupted, possibly permanently. We've recovered survivors from their command ship who may provide invaluable intelligence." As Harper relayed the message, cheers erupted across the bridge. The first genuine expression of joy Reyes had heard in months. She allowed herself a small smile, even as the reports of damage and casualties continued to come in. Later, there would be time to mourn those lost. There would be debriefings and strategic planning sessions, scientific analysis of the quantum rupture, and difficult questions about the fate of the partially assimilated survivors they had rescued. The war wasn't over. Perhaps it never would be entirely. But today had changed everything. "Commander," Chen said, coming to stand beside her chair. "What you did today, what we all did, it will be remembered as long as humanity exists." Reyes thought of the moment she had ordered the quantum disruptor to overload, of the impossible gamble they had taken. "We did what was necessary, First Officer, what anyone would have done." Chen shook his head. "Not anyone, Commander. That's the point." As Meridian's defense ships approached to escort them to the spaceport for emergency repairs, Reyes stood and faced her exhausted crew. The Phoenix was built for one purpose: to prove that humanity would not go quietly into extinction. Today we fulfilled that purpose, but our work isn't finished. She gestured to the view screen, where the stars shone with renewed promise. The Kryvax believed that individuality was a weakness, that our independent minds made us vulnerable. Today we proved that our greatest strength lies in being uniquely human, imperfect, unpredictable, and absolutely unwilling to surrender our freedom to anyone or anything. The bridge crew rose to their feet in silent acknowledgement, their faces etched with exhaustion, but also with something that had been missing for too long: hope. As the Phoenix descended toward Meridian Colony's welcoming lights, Commander Elinga Reyes allowed herself to believe, for the first time since the Kryvax had appeared, that humanity's story was far from over. In fact, perhaps it was just beginning.